Hey, April, welcome to the His and Her Money Show.
Hello, April.
Hello, so happy to be here.
We are happy to have you here because you've been on quite a journey. You have been working hard to get rid of debt, and you have made some incredible progress up to this point. And so we're so glad to have you come here, share your story and the work that you put in to inspire others to put in the same work. But before we start talking about your journey to debt freedom, can you just say hello to everyone that's tuned in right now and let them know what you are all about?
Hello, His and Her Money Show. So my name is April Wesley. I currently live in Atlanta, Georgia. I am a neurologic physical therapist, so I pretty much help or I work with individuals who have had different types of brain injuries, such as like a stroke or either like even as extreme as a gunshot wound to the head, and I help them like walk, function again. So that's what I do as my 9 to 5. And I am now here on the His and Her Money Show in a full circle moment, paying off over $130,000 worth of debt in 2 years. So I'm very excited to share.
Awesome. So we're super excited to have you on the show as a part of our In the Middle series. You guys listening, you know that is a feature that we actually share here about those that are on their way to debt freedom journey. So they haven't quite paid off all of their debt just yet, but they have a lot to tell, right? So a lot of advice, a lot of tips. So we're super excited to dig a little deeper. So tell everybody the amount of debt that you had in total or have in total, and then how much have you paid off thus far and what type of debt was it?
So in total, I had, if you wanted to count my previous home, which I had, I was upwards almost $500,000 in debt, which is just insane, really saying that out loud, because I had never said that out loud until just now. So it has been, I've paid off, if you want to not count the home, I've paid off over $130,000. And with the home, I guess that puts me like at 260 or so that I've paid off. So I consider myself to be really in the middle. And, you know, my hope and prayer is that just me having the amounts that I have will inspire someone who feels like they can't get out of it, or where do I even start, or is this even possible? I mean, so many individuals have crazy amounts of debt and just feel like they're just going to die with that debt. And I'm here to say that, you know, by God's grace and will, no, you will not, and you can do it too.
Awesome. So tell us what the remainder debt consists of.
Okay, so and I didn't tell you what type. So student loans, car loans, my home mortgage, credit cards, and I believe I had one personal loan. And so the current loans that I still have are just all student loans. So the Lord's gonna get me through. But yeah, so I paid off the car loans, which I will explain that story. It is just ridiculous. Obviously paid off the mortgage, and then my personal loans and all credit cards. And I mean, I had upwards of probably $20,000 worth of credit cards. My car loans were probably upwards of $35,000. My mortgage was at about 120. It started out like 125, but I ended up paying off like 119, 100 or 120. What am I forgetting? The personal loan was around, by the time I started my debt freedom journey, that one was around 3,000 at that time. So I had paid off a pretty good chunk of that before, just with overtime, not because I was being intentional, but just because I was paying it off for like 4 years. So quite a bit of debt, but there you go.
Now, you just said it, quite a bit of debt. So you were at one point in your life okay with debt, so to speak. You had various different types. You had the student loan, credit card, cars. None of this stuff is abnormal, but you had, a little bit of everything. And at one point that was okay with you, but then something changed inside you, or something led you to see things differently. And you decided that I don't want to live like this anymore. I don't want to have all this debt in my life. Can you talk to us about what led you to have the thought that you need to do something differently with your finances and that you need to get rid of your debt?
So as I explained before, I am a neurologic physical therapist. So not in physical therapy, most people think about people who have back injuries or knee injuries or things like that. But I'm like pretty highly specialized, like I said, that I treat brain injuries. And so I say that to say that I have a high level of education, not just, I have a doctorate degree, and on top of that, a years long residency of learning how to do this specific type of therapy. So going through all of that and never have been taught anything about financial literacy along 8+ years of schooling. So I'll say this. So I don't mind sharing my age, but I'm 32. When I was like 27, 28, I would listen to Susie Orman, for example. I would listen to her show with her screaming at everybody, telling them, you can't buy this and all this other stuff. And I almost watched it just for entertainment value, like not even being serious about what she's saying. Like I was taking it serious, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, I just didn't understand how impactful personal finances were. I just didn't. I didn't have that education before. And so it wasn't like I hadn't ever known that I should be more considerate about my finances, but nothing had hit me. So what happened was in 2007, Father's Day weekend, 2007, I was actually on a book tour. And so that specific weekend, Father's Day, I'm originally from Dallas, Texas, shout out to Dallas. But I was going to Dallas and Houston for that portion of the book tour. And that was on a Saturday and Sunday. On that Thursday, my aunt called me and basically told me that my father was found dead in his home. And as you can imagine, it's like Father's Day weekend. It's like, it was almost surreal. Like it was kind of like an out of body experience. If you hear people talk about that, just like, what is actually happening to me right now? And I believe that God can speak to us in a way, especially when he wants you for something, when he wants you to do something in this earth, and you've said to Lord, freely use me, Lord. I believe that the Lord strategically used that situation because he was like, I know how to speak to you and you alone. And in that situation, my father was literally considered the level below a genius, if you will. So like tested on the scale. So he was super intelligent man, but did not know how to manage his finances well, in the midst of, and this is all like kind of public information, but in the midst of, issues with substance abuse over the years and things like that, just did not manage his money well. And unfortunately didn't have any policies or anything to bury him. Didn't have any money at all. It was sad in that light, but I still believe that like God used his death for goodness, in this situation. And so my aunt called me in the middle of work. So I'm like at lunch talking to my aunt, and I knew when I saw her phone number on my caller ID, I already knew what it was, because I'm like, there's no other reason that she would be calling me. She knows that I work. She knows what type of work that I do. She's not going to be calling me for any reason. So I got off the phone. Now, mind you, my mother and father never married, but they were had been knowing each other since they were 9 years old, like one of those stories. And I immediately called my mother, told her what happened, because they lived in totally different cities, told her what happened, and she was in disbelief. And then something came on me, like after I was off the phone with her, and I'm like, wait a minute, he didn't have any money, he didn't have anything, so who's going to pay for his arrangements? Who's going to care for this whole process? Like, how is he going to get to, like the funeral home, like all of these different, the coroner, all of these different things. Like, I just didn't even know. And the worst part about it is I make all of this money. Now, mind you, I wasn't making 6 figures, but I was making close to it and good money, like there was no reason that I should be in this position of not having anything to even help with, but it was because I was in such a poor financial situation. So I couldn't sit here and blame my father for what he didn't have, when it was like, okay, but God, but you're April, you're not him. Like, what are you doing, or how have you not saved or been more responsible with your personal finances that now you need help in helping this situation? So what ends up happening is that I ended up paying half for the arrangements, and which really, it was me going to my mother, and my aunt paid for half of the arrangements. And my mother ended up giving me the money to pay for his arrangements. Now, mind you, my mother probably made a third of what I made. And there was like absolutely no reason that she should be in this predicament anyway. And I said, I was honestly, like, it was a week process, and I'll get into that process because I just feel like these details are so important. But I just felt like God had done too much for me to be in this position. And I could not leave my children in this position. Like, I just made a decision then and there. I said, I've made my own decisions of poor money management up until this point, but the buck stops here. Like, I was so done. Like, I was embarrassed for myself, but at the end of the day, I was like, okay, I can't be embarrassed. I can't be shameful, but I do have a conviction to change from this day forward. And that's exactly what happened. Like, I literally, it was like, I don't know if it was like how people explain that they just went cold turkey with substance abuse or something, but financial instability was my substance. And I just had been abusing it. And I was like, I'm turning it, like, from this day forward. So fast forward to the weekend of his memorial service. So we had his memorial service, and God is so good, because I'm just coming full circle right now. And I knew after his memorial service, I hung out with some friends. I'll just tell you this quick story. Weirdly enough, I woke up on a Sunday. His memorial service was on a Friday. I was in Houston visiting friends. On a Sunday, I woke up and I was like, for some reason, I started watching YouTube videos about how people survived in jail. And I know this sounds absolutely nuts, but I was like, why am I watching like people being able to survive in jail circumstances? And I believe that God showed me, he was like, because you've been in jail. You've been in jail, and I'm trying to show you how you have kind of survived through this, but you're about to break out. You're about to be done with this. And I believe that he was speaking on the area of my finances. And that Monday I went back to Atlanta to go home, and I just remember like this couple being on my friend's show. And I was like, it's some type of couple. And I don't know how I researched y'all, but I learned, I was like, it's His and Her Money podcast. Now, mind you, I hadn't ever listened to a podcast before. And I mean, like I said, like, I love learning. I love resources. I read books, all these different things, but I hadn't ever listened to a podcast. So I was like, I look like an old granny. I was like, now, how do you work this podcast thing on your phone? So I literally found like the podcast app, looked you up, and this was in 2017. I don't know how many podcasts you had at that point, but I listened to all of them probably within a week, if not more. And I remember saving, because like when you're on the airplane, you can't access the internet or whatever, but for some reason I was able to access it and just listen. And from that day forward, my life just changed. So I just really publicly thank y'all, because had it not been for your faithfulness and your obedience in doing all of this, I would have never been in this position on your show right now. So I don't know what the original question was, but that's how it all started from there.
I'm speechless.
Wow.
Like, I was literally trying to like fight back a tear.
You were,
like,
I could see it.
My gosh, like, your story is incredible. And I know exactly those moments that you're speaking of. First, our condolences on the passing of your father. My gosh. But to be able to take what happened to you and not let it become you. Okay. So you were able to do something about it, so you would not stay in that same position is remarkable. And just to hear that God allowed our show to be able to be one of the tools or resources to be able to just steer you and help you. Wow. I'm honored. I'm speechless. I don't even know what question to ask, honestly, at this point.
My sentiments are the same.
Wow.
But what we'll do, we'll move forward in the story, because now she's had this moment, and now her mindset has shifted. Now you're thinking differently. I have to do something different.
Yeah.
You plugged into our show, you flew back home, you touched down, you got a new mindset, you've taken in consumed some new information. So what were some of the strategic things that you began to do when you got back home and just to even start your journey?
Yeah, so I don't know if I heard it on your show. I'm assuming that I did, but I learned about a zero-based budget. Had never heard of that before. Now, mind you, I had I had been working on a budget before. Like, I would write things down, have a line item, have an amount that I'm going to spend on it, but I would end up spending more and just like, oh, I'm just gonna, just being ridiculous. Like, I was so all over the place. But this time something zoomed in, so I really learned about a zero-based budget. And so the issue too was that when I would spend all of my money in my checking account, I would resource to my credit cards and keep swiping those up. So I stayed on the maximum of all of my credit cards. And so I made a decision. It was probably a couple of weeks. I was like, and everybody says, I'll just use my credit card when I'm in an emergency. But everything was an emergency to me. I was like, okay, if I want, Chick-fil-A, that's an emergency. And it was like, no, that's not an emergency. Like, you were just overspending. And so I had to learn boundaries. That was like my first thing, is like boundaries. You have to stop superseding what you have planned. And I hadn't ever really done that to myself before. So when I started living on the zero-based budget, I really saw how much I was spending on things and what needed to be cut down. So my first order of business was to stay in that budget. And once I got in that budget, it was so tight that then, of course, I discovered like Dave Ramsey, Total Money Makeover, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, a lot of the principles I'm learning on His and Her Money, like, I see this when people are talking about this resource with Total Money Makeover, but I was so broke at the time, y'all, that I could not afford the Dave Ramsey book. So what I strategically would do on the way home was Barnes and Noble. So I would go in day by day and read a chapter of the book. That's how broke I was. I was that dedicated. I was like, I don't care what anybody says. Like, I'm sick of this. I was like, this is going to be, I said, my dad would want better for me. Like, he wouldn't even accept this foolishness that I've been doing, but even in his own situation, he made those choices, but he would have wanted me to have better choices. So that's exactly what I did. And obviously, over time, I started being more consistent with my I was consistent with my zero-based budget, and I was able to purchase the book eventually, which was like this crazy, super proud moment. But even then, I would, I remember one time being so broke on a weekend because I didn't get paid till Wednesday. And I knew that I was having a deposit from some other resource on that Monday. But over the weekend, I literally had $3.86 to eat. So I figured it out. I was like, well, I have some leftover blueberries in my refrigerator. I had some like granola or like something like granola. And I was like, well, if I get a banana and like 2 like Idaho potatoes, I can cut those up and make fries and then use the banana to make a smoothie and spread that out. And I was like, I'm not going to overspend. Like, I was like, I'm going to starve before I overspend. Like, I have to break this yoke. I have to break this issue of my flesh that has like had me captured for 30 plus years. Like, I refuse to lose at this point. Like, I was like, I'm done. And I remember one time that same weekend, I didn't even have any gas money to go to church. I was like, and people just like, oh, you're skipping church. And I was like, I just believe that God does not want me to swipe a credit card to go to church. Like, I'm going to stay at home. I'm going to read my Bible and we're going to get it together. I'm going to see the Lord in the church next week because I'm not about to do this. And my friend knew what I was doing. She was the only person that knew what I was doing. And she brought me Chipotle that day. And that was like, that Chipotle tasted like Ruth's Chris or something like, like, I mean, it tasted so good. But that's just God's faithfulness. I believe that he was like, even in this little, I'm going to watch over you. I'm going to protect you. I'm going to guide you. So that was like one early on strategy. Fast forward about 2 to 3 months, I was spending, so I had an Audi Q5 And that bill was $640.32 per month. So my monthly payment, I was call it a bill, it was a bill, but $640.32, and my insurance was $298 per month. So we're talking about a whole $1,000 worth of car that needed to be getting rid of, basically. So the Lord, I believe that I would just strategically, so my debt freedom journey has been about strategy. So I was still paying down debt as I could, but I didn't have a big cash flow like snowball to really contribute to the debt. I had to learn how to strategize and open up these huge debt, like open up these bill situations so that I can get rid of those, and then I would have adequate cash flow to really start cash flowing things. So basically, long story short on that, I ended up selling my Audi Q5 on Valentine's Day 2018, and my goal was to buy a cash car, but what ended up happening is that once I sold that car, I needed to have I was upside down on that car, $6,000 from one previous car. So that's the whole car game is just ridiculous, because I mean, they make so much money off of you, especially when you're buying a brand new car. I didn't know this. Now I know, obviously, but I didn't know this. So I had to save $6,000 for that. I thought that original money that I saved was going to be enough for getting out of the car, for being upside down, as well as for a cash car. But I ended up selling my car and not having a car for 2 months and riding public transportation. So that was a strategy that people just did not understand. I mean, when I did that, people were like, April has lost it. Like, she's been talking about this money stuff, but she's completely lost it now. Like, she's nuts. Everybody, I mean, from my friends to people at church to everybody was just like, April, do you need a ride? Do you want, like all this stuff? And so I literally, at the end of my street was a bus stop. I learned to ride, the MARTA. Like, MARTA was my friend. I'm like, thank God for MARTA. I got dropped off right in front of my work every day, picked back up from my work every day. And it just worked out. And God allowed me to save about $4,200 in 2 months. And then I ended up buying a very nice cash car. So.
Wow.
Man, you focused.
Yeah.
You're out here focused.
You know what I was just thinking? I was like, so we get comments sometimes, even some emails of, I'm going to say singles, some of them, not all. I mean, just really upset with us, like Ty Talent, how come, you all don't feature singles? We're like, no, we do feature singles, but however, it doesn't really matter about the marital status, if you're married or not. You can take what we're teaching and what we're giving you, our resources, and apply it to your life. Like, stop making excuses. And to see, I'm assuming you're not married, because you didn't mention that in the beginning, right? Okay, so you're not married. And she sat up here and literally watched, at that time in 2017, how many episodes do you think we probably had on His Own Money? Well over
150.
I was about to say, that's what I was about to say, about
150.
150. She listened to each episode at that point. She went to Barnes & Noble's to read Total Money Makeover, a chapter a day.
A chapter a day.
Yeah, she sold her car and she was taking public transportation. Like, excuses are out of the window. Like, my gosh, what you're doing, if it does not like put anybody in shape, I don't care the marital status or not. Like, my gosh, like, you're putting people to shame.
Everybody listening like, man, I'm not doing enough.
Oh my, yeah.
Everyone knows why life insurance is important, but many of us choose to ignore the reality of what would happen if we were to die suddenly without proper protection. The results could be devastating for your surviving family members, leaving them with a large bill for your final expenses, or even worse, loss of the family home because they can no longer cover the mortgage.
Term life insurance gives you peace of mind at a price you can afford. Term life insurance allows you to meet your financial obligations today while still protecting your family's future tomorrow.
If you don't currently have a life insurance policy, you are not alone. According to Life Insurance Statistics and Facts, which is a report put out by the life insurance industry, about 43% of the population don't own a life insurance policy in any amount.
Wow. Buying life insurance doesn't have to be complicated. Legal & General America make it easy for you to protect your family's financial future.
As one of the nation's leaders in low-cost, high-quality life insurance to over 1.3 million families, they know how to protect you.
Legal in General America makes understanding and applying for life insurance easy. You can get a free quote by going to hisorhermoney.com/LGA. The links are also in the description box below. So I want to back up a little bit. How did you sell your car, number one? Because we get people that ask, okay, I'm upside down on my car. How can I get rid of it? How do I give it back to the dealer? What do I do? So what was your process in selling your car?
Right. So there are a lot, and I get asked this all the time too. So there are a lot of different processes. I'll kind of share the details of mine. So basically, let's say, so I sold it in February, probably in January. I wanted to make sure that I had enough money saved to potentially get from the upside downness of it. So let me break this down. At that time, I owed $32,500. And when I checked on Kelley Blue Book, so that's what you need to do. You need to first go on Kelley Blue Book and see what the private sale is of the car and what the dealership, or they call it, it's some other type of sale they call it, but basically it's like the dealership's the sale price versus the private sale price. The private sale price is always going to be higher. So your goal is to try to sell it privately to someone so that you can kind of set your price for the vehicle and that they will hopefully buy it at that price. Your goal is to to sell it as close to what you owe on the car as possible. What I didn't say is that my car was also a lease. So what happens in the lease situation is that it's kind of the same situation if you had owned it before too, but you basically need to find out how much is owed, because it basically turns into a regular buy situation. So you need to know how much is owed on the car and then try to sell it as close to that price as possible. Most cars are not going to be, you're not going to be able to sell it for the amount that you probably owe on it, especially for a lot of individuals that are out here. When I'm talking to people now, a lot of people have 6 to 8 year car terms these days, and which blows my mind that they're able to like finance these cars for 7 to 8 years now. Like, it is insane to me. And so most people are in that situation. So where was I going with that? So basically I ended up selling so I had listed it on cars.com. There were 2 other websites that are out there, and I just cannot think of the names, but basically you can privately list your car and then anybody can see it. So like a dealership can see it, Susie down the street can see it, anybody can see it. I ended up reaching out to the dealership brand that I brought so how most, like, one person may own like 7 or 8 different types of dealerships. I basically reached out to the dealership brand. They had an actual car buyer that literally buys all kinds of cars, used cars, and disperses it out to the different dealerships. So whether it's Mazda, mine was an Audi. So, he bought for Audi, Mazda, Volkswagen, whomever, all these different brands that this particular dealership, that they owned, they bought in all kinds of cars. So I ended up selling my car back to them because I never got any bites from those private websites. So I ended up selling my car back to them for $27,500, so $27,500. I must have owed $33,500 because I had to write a cashier's check for $6,000. So like I said, my initial plan for that $6,000 was that was going to be enough to pay my overhead price, my underwater price, and buy a new cash card, but I ran out of money. And that's what put me in the situation with, riding the bus. But that's pretty much how it works. So literally because technically that dealership was familiar with my lien holder because I bought the car from them, I just literally need to present the $6,000 check to them. They put the price that they are paying for it with that $6,000 check, mail the lien holder a full $33,500 check, and then now I'm free and clear. And basically on my account, it would say account closed or paid in full or whatever it says. So that is how you get out of a car note, essentially.
So did you save the $6,000? Because at this point you were like really on this journey of trying to get out of debt and trying to release some of your expenses and things like that. So did you save the $6,000 prior to you approaching them?
Right. So that's what I did. So I saved the 6,000. So, in any of my strategies of making these big jumps with getting out of debt, I've always had to invest something into it to get. So that's another thing people don't understand. They're just like, oh, I just want it to disappear, whatever. No, sometimes you got to put in to have a bigger picture. So I had to put in the 6,000 to be freed of 33.5. And a lot of people don't realize that sometimes that's how it will work best. Because in my case, I was getting rid of $1,000 worth of debt per month. And I guess not fully worth the debt, but $640 car note plus $298 insurance. Now I didn't have any insurance or car note. I was on the bus and I was free. I had freed up cash flow of $1,000. So yeah, whether that's pulling in like your tax refund, pulling in, as much money as you can per month, I was probably only pulling in like $500 to $800 per month, prior to this transaction, because I was just learning how to do a zero-based budget. I didn't have a lot of cash flow, and then I would start working weekends. So I was working weekends at my job to have additional money so I could cash flow more. So yeah, that was my first big strategy.
And then where did you go to purchase your car for cash?
Yes, so there was, so those same websites, I just can't think of those other two, like I said, but on cars.com and also on Craigslist. Now, let me tell you, this car that I ended up purchasing was on both cars.com and Craigslist, but for everybody else out there, be very careful of solely purchasing from Craigslist, because there's a lot of craziness that goes on there. Just be careful, be mindful. But I actually purchased my car from a private, like a family, just a private, he listed the car on cars.com. I reached out to him and said, I'm looking for this car. This is my budget. He actually had the car listed for maybe $4,800. And I don't mind sharing my car. My car is a Lexus RX 300, but a 2003. So this car was literally built before I graduated from high school. But let me tell you, I love my car. Nobody can tell me that my car is not like a brand new whatever. I'm like, I love this car better than any car, because guess what? I own it outright. And that
feels different. Yeah, when you own it, it does.
Totally different. So I remember coming up, and let me tell you this quick story about buying the cash car. And I just want to explain to people that sometimes God may give you a vision about something, and it may look like that it's never going to come, but you're just like, but God, I've worked so hard. I've been saving for 2 months, like I've been riding this bus. I'm tired of it, blah, blah, blah. And I remember taking off for 3 days. I was determined to buy a car on my birthday. My birthday is April 15th, and it had literally been exactly 2 months. And I had went out day by day, riding the bus for 2 hours, going to all these far places, to all these small dealerships to buy a car. And I remember a friend, Shannon, she was like, she called me one morning. She calls me Miss April. That's a whole other story. But she's like, Miss April. She's like, did you find your car yesterday? I'm like, no. I'm like, I'm just getting discouraged, Shannon. Like, maybe God just wants me to stay on the bus, blah, blah, blah. She was like, no. Sometimes you got to go out there and get your breakthrough. Sometimes you got to go out there and get your blessing. And that has stuck with me. And that day, I was like, okay, let me get my research together again. Found this car, reached out to this guy again, because I had previously spoken with him, went to his house. The car was running great, had no issues. I really had peace about it. Literally gave him, he ended up going down on his price, $1,100, paid him $3,700 cash right there. I had never done that before. I mean, literally like counting out of hundreds. I was like, this is a lot, but you know what? I'm leaving here with a car. And that's how it happened. So I purchased my car from just a private person, a guy that he had a family, 2 girls and a wife, and his wife just wanted a brand new car, and they went to sell their old car. They had been having it for 13 years.
Wow. How did you handle the social aspect? You talked about, especially during the phase where you were getting rid of your car and riding the bus and chopping up potatoes. Like, everybody didn't get it, and people were looking at you sideways. We can sit here in the now and see that you made it through, but in that moment, when those comments, those side eyes were coming your way, how did you handle that?
I think that, I guess I'm kind of a person like when my reputation precedes me. And so I've always kind of been like a rebel person of like, you know what? If this is something I feel peace about in my heart, I'm going to do it. I don't really care what anybody says, because I believe that this is going to birth something that is way greater than what we can, you know, temporarily see right now. And that's how I've been since I was a child. So even when I called my mother and told her what I was doing and I was going to ride the bus, she was just like, okay. Because she was like, this girl, she does like whatever. So I mean, honestly, kind of when you have your moms, you know, like if your mom is like, okay, even though everybody else is kind of freaking out, then you're good. And that's kind of where I was. I was like, you know what? This, when you're getting a whole $1,000 cash flow in your account, I mean, in your budget that's opening up, you really don't care. You shouldn't care what anybody says. I know I didn't, because that was going to be the breakthrough that I had been looking for, you know, at that moment. So yeah, I mean, I'm just, that's my personality. I'm just like, okay, like you can talk about me, you can say, April, you're crazy. And I literally, my friends and my acquaintances were split in half. Like I literally had some that were like, April, we're worried about you. Like, do you need to seek a counselor? Like, what's going on? And then we had the ones that were like, good girl, like how was the bus last week? Anything fun happened? You know, like whatever. And I'm, you know, so I would talk to both of them the same, you know, tell them the truth. So.
Love it. Love it. So let's talk about some other practical things that you've been doing, because I mean, you've paid off quite a bit, and not counting the house. We're assuming that you sold the house, but what's also been your plan of attack? How have you been knocking out this debt?
So obviously being strategic and learning expenditure, like needs versus wants. And I've heard that several times throughout your podcast, is understanding like what you actually need. So for example, before I turned on this video with you all today, I literally had the choice of, let's go back to Chick-fil-A again, going to Chick-fil-A and spending money, or going ahead and cooking up all these groceries that I bought yesterday. You know, and I could settle out for an excuse and say, well, I'm busy, I need to get prepared for the podcast, blah, blah, blah. But no, I went and meal prepped, you know, 5 meals before I got on the phone with y'all. And so it's making a decision and being responsible and not saying, I'm going to continue to have temporary gratification, but I'm going to have long-term gratification, or, you know, like doing things for the long term. Other practical things is, so obviously live on a zero-based budget. I've worked pretty much 6 days a week for the past 2 years. So that's challenging. My work is like mentally and physically challenging, but I'm getting tired now, but I believe at one point I literally just had supernatural strength just to do it. And we get paid at a better rate on the weekends, on Saturdays, than I do on Fridays. So I think for a lot of people don't want to put in the extra work, like physical work, to work and make more money. And sometimes you need to do that. So whether that's an entrepreneurial standpoint, whether that's actually being able to pick up more, you know, hours at your job, there are ways to do things. It's just, how bad do you want it?
Yeah. So you also had another strategy where you decided to sell your home. So we're assuming that you did that to also knock out some of the debt as well, too, to open up some extra cash in the budget to be able to apply towards your debt. So talk about that.
Yeah. So like I said, I sold my car in February, bought a new car in April of last year, of 2018. And then so in July of 2018, I started, so when I moved to Atlanta, that was another thing. I didn't want to purchase a home in Atlanta. I thought that it was too much. I had actually saw, you know, my family get foreclosed on. It's particularly after like and during the recession, which is like having these variable rate loans and all these other things, that things just went out of control. And so I just felt like, I'm a single person, like, God, I'm not ready to buy a home. I'm not buying a home. And when I came here, God was like, you're buying a home. Like, I really felt that way. So I was scared out of my mind, bought a home. But I ended up buying a home in one of the gentrification neighborhoods. And 4 years later, my home was almost worth double than what I paid for it. And I was like, so I found this out, and it was crazy. The real reason I found it out was because when I would walk down my street every day from the bus stop, I noticed this home that was getting, what's the word for it?
Renovated?
Renovated. I'm like, I cannot think of the word. Getting renovated. And so that home, I mean, this home kind of looks like a shack before. By the time it was renovated, they had put it on the market for the highest bid that the whole neighborhood hadn't had, period. Like, it was like this amazing bid, and it was $200,000 over what I purchased my home for. Now, it was a little bit larger, but I'm like, our neighborhood is selling these types of homes now. So I'm like, well, let me not be silly around here. I'm about to see what mine is worth. And then come to find out, like, my home size, they were selling homes in my neighborhood at that time, and I didn't even know it, for almost double of what I paid for it. And I was like, I kind of checked my spirit. I was like, God, is this what you want me to do? And I spent about $8,000 total. So that was another part of the strategy, is that I had to put in money with, painting the walls, getting all these things done to the home in order to prepare it for market. But I just believe that my investment towards that strategy was going to pay off with the sum that I would be able to get out with equity. So that's one great thing about real estate, is that if you choose wisely and you are really led with the right investments, you can reap great benefits with real estate. And I learned that very quickly. So that was like an amazing strategy. So I ended up reaping, and even in that, I didn't get my home sold in the fall like I originally thought I was going to. So I listed it in September. I took it down in December because no one was really like putting in any great offers. And then I relisted in February of 2019, and literally the home was sold and closed within 3 weeks after that.
Wow. Incredible. So we're assuming, did you take the proceeds of the sale of the home to apply towards debt as well?
Absolutely. So that was the real reason I even sold the home. I didn't know. I was kind of like in a peaceful situation where I knew that my time for that home was done. So that's the reason that I felt like this was a good strategy to go ahead and sell the home. I was like, well, this now takes away responsibilities from a home. So like, if something breaks or whatever, like, I would rather rent right now, especially while I'm in this situation with getting out of debt. And so I was able to get $76,000 from the home equity. So from the proceeds from the sale of the home, and literally every single cent I put that towards debt. Every single cent. I didn't take not a cent out of it. Wow. And I would not have been able to do that had I not had those 2017 times of being diligent with even that $3. Like, how was I going to be diligent with 76,000 if I wasn't diligent with the $3? So I believe that God brings us through stepping stones, and you got to be faithful with the little to get the much. Like, it's true.
So was your approach for the 76,000, did you do the debt snowball where you paid your smallest debt and then in order? So what was your approach?
Right. So I totally believe in the debt snowball for someone who is just now getting to that point of starting their debt freedom journey. But when you're disciplined enough, I definitely believe that the avalanche is very useful. So I paid off all of my credit card bills, which varied from like 13 to 18% interest rates. I paid off all my undergrad loans, which weren't horrible interest rates, but they were still around 6%. I paid off, so like 20,000 or so. And then another part of my payoff. So this is a part of my story that I just believe that a lot of people are suffering through and have never said anything, but I actually had a family member to take out money in my name before many years ago. And I'm talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of debt. So I paid off around 46,000 of that as well. Because and those were variable interest rate loans, and they had crept up to 11 to 13% each. And I was like, I'm about to be entertaining these 13% interest rate loans, 18%. So I truly had a conviction to pay off those higher interest rate loans and they were variable rate. So I was like, they have to go. So I just chose those. I had peace about taking care of those.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. The avalanche method is, for those of you who may not know, it's the opposite of debt snowball, and it's where you take the highest interest rate product, whether it's a credit card or a loan, and you attack that first. And in the end, you're saving money because you're also saving on that interest. But wow, you couldn't get the debt that the family member took out in your name.
That's crazy.
They wouldn't take that off of your credit.
Please
They
tell
made
us
you
about this.
responsible for that?
Yeah, so I really do think, and I hadn't done a lot of research, but I almost want to say that they would end up getting, because you would have to report all the details, and so that could potentially put them in legal trouble. And I didn't have peace about that. And honestly, I just firmly believe in my heart and hope one day maybe I can come back to your show to tell it. But like, I don't know. I just almost feel like it's going to be its own testimony, where it's like, God is like, that money, even though that was wrong, I'm going to do so much. I'm going to do exceedingly abundantly above all of that. And so just don't worry. Like, I'm giving you the strategy to take care of this. Just do it. And, some people will just maybe outraged and say, and I don't believe that this is okay, but in my situation, this is how I chose to handle it. And it's been over 10 years of this being an issue in my life. And this was something I was always afraid of with facing my finances, because I knew that part was looming over me as well. And I'm like, I didn't even do that part, God, but he's like, I'm just going to take care of it. Like, I'm going to keep showing you. So it's not to say that even when something bad happens to us, like, it's not okay to just wallow in it and just be like, well, unless you're providing a complete miracle, like a complete wipeout of my debt, Lord, like, I shouldn't do anything. No, you got to start moving forward. You got to start taking action, and then the strategies will come, but you got to start somewhere. So that's where I am with that.
Man,
Yeah,
that is a heck of a story. But man, your whole story is amazing. So I mean, you paid off multiple six figures if you include the sale of the home. What is your projection to finish this journey?
I'm just like, I've one large loan I just refinanced. That was at an 8% rate. I just refinanced that to a 4.5% rate. So I'm believing that's going to help me with not continuing to accrue so much. But I'm praying for, so I would say I probably have 100, and actually with this, because I still have one portion of the family members loan. So like I'm still like around 210. So I'm thinking about 3 years, 3 to 4 years.
Amazing.
that's awesome.
That is that would be incredible in
that
itself.
Time will fly no matter what. It's going to pass. So I love the fact that you have a plan.
I got to tell you, April, we are
Very proud
of you.
Extremely proud.
You got off that plane.
Yep.
And you went to work.
You sure did.
You haven't slowed down. You have been willing to do whatever it takes. And now you've knocked out multiple six figures worth of debt. And guess what? You're going to keep going, and you're going to cross that finish line. And you're going to be an example to so many people to know that no matter what mountain of debt you're up against, if you're willing to put in the work, you will make it to the other side. So we salute you for the work that you have already done, and we're cheering you on for the rest of your journey.
That's right.
So if people want to keep up with you as you continue to go through the process, how can they find you?
Yes, so I am on Instagram at April D. Wesley, and also at Rain Budget Curation. So I started my own personal finance consulting. So that's Rain, REIGN, budget, the word budget, and then curation, CURATION. Also at Queenship Restored. That's my actual ministry page. So Queenship, and then the word restored with the ED. And then also at queenshiprestored.com. So, but you can find my debt freedom journey, especially at Rain Budget Curation.
Awesome. We'll be sure to have links in the show notes of this episode. April, thank you so much for being transparent and sharing your incredible story with our audience today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so grateful for y'all.